Yeah. Is the door unlocked?
Can we leave it open for at least a few minutes?
Because people coming in late.
Anyone who comes in late, because we do have drop-in meditation too. So sometimes people aren't sure which door to come in.
But then we'll close it. Yeah. Yeah. You too.
Okay.
You let us know when you're ready. Yeah.
We're going to start with a prayer, a chant, and a very brief meditation.
That won't bother. That's
Nope.
Nope. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think tonight in particular, most people are online. The others
Or watch the recording. No, the
we're not,
recording.
But I'm recording. I mean, they registered, but they can't come in person. Yeah.
And we can't come next week.
Oh, okay. But you're registered. We'll send you recordings. Yeah.
We're going to Cirque du Soleil.
Ah.
First time ever, yeah. I got the ticket.
I'm sorry, I can't compete.
No, I guess not.
We can do yoga postures. Here's Padmini.
Oh, good. We had a feeling she'd be coming. Sure,
Hello,
it's
dear.
fine. Hello, great soul. Welcome, welcome.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Plus, we need to keep the path
Camera.
for the camera view
Yeah.
so that all those people, hi people.
Yeah. So are you ready, Saranya? Do you feel ready? Okay. So let's begin together with a prayer. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
friend, beloved God,
friend, beloved God,
great masters of self-realization,
great masters of self-realization,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
and Paramhansa Yogananda Ji,
and Paramhansa Yogananda Ji,
saints of all religions,
saints of all religions,
friend and guide Swami Kriyananda,
friend and guide Swami Kriyananda.
we humbly bow to you all.
We humbly bow to you all.
Help us to dive deeply,
Help us to dive deeply,
to open our hearts,
to open our hearts,
to keep our minds open,
to keep our minds open,
and to feel thy divine grace
and to feel thy divine grace
flowing through us.
flowing through us.
Help us to be perfect channels
Help us to be perfect channels
of that grace
of that grace
to all.
to all.
Om.
Om.
Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen. This is the spiritualizing relationships versus the drop-in. Everyone's here versus the drop-in movement and meditation. Okay,
Okay, very good. And you can pull chairs up if you want. Yeah.
it's up to you. So
Or
we're going to
take any of the empty chairs.
have a chant
Yeah.
of Door of My Heart, and then we'll have a very brief meditation. You to chant along. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, just for once come to me. Wilt thou come, just for once Sit up tall. Spine lifted, body relaxed. If it's comfortable, softly closing the eyes, gazing upward through the spiritual eye. Feel as if you are breathing into your heart center, through the door of your heart, expanding all of that energy there. Nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. Let's take a few minutes now to meditate briefly. Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Spiritualizing Relationships. I feel like there was another part of the name of the harmonious.
that's it.
No, I'm getting it mixed up with
Yep.
from a year ago.
Yeah.
Just a couple of sort of logistical things as we begin. There's a drop-in meditation that's occurring in the yoga studio. So if you need restrooms, we've opened up over in the teaching center, this building back to my left. So those doors are unlocked, so you can use the restrooms there. They go until 8 o'clock. After 8 o'clock, we're fine. What was the other thing I was going to say? There was something else. Oh, so in terms of the flow, we're going to have, so we have 4 weeks here in this series, and there'll be sort of separate components in each of the 4 weeks. And for each evening, so like for tonight, we'll talk a little bit. There will be plenty of time at the end for questions. But if there's something like you're going to lose it, or you really need clarification before we move on to point, just raise your hand.
We have a microphone, so we'll ask you to use that when you ask the question, because we are recording the class. Some people can only watch the recording. So, and for any of you, if you miss a class and would like the recording, it makes a big difference to hear someone say the question.
Yeah, and so that leads me to one other clarification, that it was a little confusing on the website, and we apologize. We finally got clarification today. So we're not streaming this class on live stream or Zoom. So if for those people who are members, you can attend for free, but we're only sending the recordings for people who actually register for the class. Okay, and if you're not a member, we do ask people to register for the class. So that's just sort of our general policy now, kind of moving forward. Not that there won't be exceptions, and if you need an exception, you can talk to one of us on staff. So for all of you who are watching, we will get this recording out. Well, you have it if you're watching it. Yeah.
Yes, Shanta.
Sorry, this is not the regular drop-in.
It's
No, so the
not.
drop-in is next door in the yoga
Next door,
studio. Sorry,
yes.
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 Okay,
That's
no worries.
okay.
Please close our door, thank you.
We can close it.
I think we can close it now, yeah. I was leaving it open for people to come in. So relationships, we all have lots and lots of relationships, lots of different kinds of relationships. Some are better than others, some are more functional than others. And we taught, along with Shanti, a similar course about a year ago. Was it last summer? I don't remember when it was. A spring, something like that. So it's about a year ago. Some of the elements might be the same, but this is a topic in general that it's very important on the spiritual path. And we're going to talk about why that is here in well, really all of these weeks, but especially here for tonight in a moment. But there's also some elements of it that we're going to talk about that are very difficult, because for the spiritual path, the number one thing for any of us, the most important relationship is our relationship with God, because our goal is to find God and to merge back with the divine. And we utilize our relationships to help us along the way, or maybe we're here to help them, sort of here on the material realm in the world. So it's not that relationships aren't important, but it's sometimes hard it can almost feel indulgent in a way of my relationship with the divine is more important than my relationship with my partner. It's like, well, wait a minute, this is very, very important. All of my relationships are important. Well, of course they are. Even, we talk about this on staff. It's like, okay, we're here to help people, help everybody. And yet our own individual relationships with God, to realize God, become self-realized, is the goal in life. So everything is sort of with that prism that we're going to be talking about. So the theme for tonight is, therefore, life is a pilgrimage. Now, we're not going to be talking about going on pilgrimages necessarily, but what we are going to talk about is how relationships play a part in that journey. Because in a pilgrimage, one way to look at it is that the ultimate destination of a pilgrimage is God, is that merging of our soul with the union with the divine. But what's really important and what's really nice about all that is it's the journey getting there, every step along the way. And we take those steps with others. Sometimes as we're walking that path, metaphorically, we're walking hand in hand and arm for long distances. And sometimes we're walking, just next to each other. And sometimes we're just kind of crossing and everything. And sometimes we're like, don't even really be with that other person, but we're still in relationship. We also are in relationship in the sense that we're all trying to get to God. So even if our spiritual paths are the same, or even if our spiritual paths are slightly different, there are some commonalities and there are some elements to this that we can take in, some principles and some tools and techniques and some attitudes about what it is that and how it is that we want to make this journey back to God.
Nice. Are you handing it to me?
I'm handing it over to you now.
It's giving me that look. Is it my turn?
It's your turn.
So what I'd like to do is ask each of you to just say what drew you.
We have to turn it on.
We will. So will you do that? And I mean, it can be very simple, but it helps us to know why you're here. What is it about this class? And I will say, you could say, I'm not sure. It's fine. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you might really know very clearly why you've come, why this class is calling you. Whatever the answer is, you can't get it wrong. It'll just help us have a sense of that. And if you could say your first name, that would be helpful. So I'm sorry, I'm going to start with you.
My name is Yu. What drew me here because I got divorced and had another relationship, rebound relationship, didn't end up well.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to avoid relationship. I lose some faith in human being, like human being are ego. I don't want to get involved with those things.
Okay.
I try to learn a better way to deal with human being.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So
Thank
glad
you.
you're here. Thank you.
My name is Saranya, and I'm here with my husband. And we have been married will be 48 years this June.
Wow.
And as my father said, what did my father say when they were married 50 years? Still learning, still learning. Yes. That's
Yes.
after my parents were married for 50 years. Another small interesting point, not related at all, but my parents got married in 1944. His parents got married in 1944.
Wow.
My parents got married in February. His parents got married in February.
Is
My
that
parents
something?
were on which day? The 10th and the 12th.
Wow.
I never remember which day.
Isn't that something? Amazing.
But, so we're here to continue learning and growing. You know, each stage of life changes.
Yes.
You know, first just the two of us, and then you have children, and
Yes.
you know, you go through all those years, and the children are grown up, and you know, they're out on their own, and then it's different. And he recently retired, and that
Okay.
makes a change as well. So,
Yes.
you know, life always changes, and it's just good to keep learning and growing. So
Yes.
that's why I'm here.
Great.
Okay, so she forced me to come. Well, I know that she's been involved with Ananda a long time, and many times I come and I drop her off and go look at the bookstores. But I have an open mind and want to learn more about Ananda, and this workshop on relationships seemed interesting. So I read a lot of different books, and I think it's important to keep an open mind, so I'm here for that. And as she say, yeah, all that she said as well.
Beautiful. Welcome.
Thank you. I feel there's a lot of reasons. It's hard to pick one. At some point, I feel human relationship is just, the source of great joy or great suffering. And of course, I want the joy part and avoid the suffering part. So on a side note, so I recently just had 6 sessions of astrology with a great astrologer and also Ananda devotee. So I learned my chart and the people in my family's charts, each of them. So I find, it's very intriguing, very interesting, the dynamics with each of us. And also, as a mom of 2 young kids, I find I really like to spend time alone, which basically like spend time with God. But how to really enjoy spending time with all my family members one-on-one and really find the joy spending time with them rather than thinking, back on my mind, it's more like my duty. Then I want to run away to spend time on my own and to read and chant and meditate. So all these little things brought me here.
Yeah,
Great.
very wonderful. Thank you, Claire. Yeah.
I'm here because just a few minutes ago before I got here, I had a choice between packing or being here. And I just stood there and asked Master, do you want me to pack or do you want me to go? And I got the answer to come here. And
Nice.
it's just a very simple reason. And I think it's probably a difference between having relationships in a human level versus in a divine level.
Yeah.
And I take my answer to come here is moving towards that.
Nice. Very
Packing
nice.
for where?
Australia.
Australia. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Shantala.
I was also packing. I thought, should I or shouldn't I?
For the same trip?
Tomorrow.
Oh, you're going with Asha.
Right,
Wow.
yeah. I'm not sure if I can explain this or know exactly how this looks in the world, but I've always been, let's see, what would you say? An excellent salesman. And so consequently, that means I must speak to people.
Yeah.
And I must have the ability to listen.
Yeah.
But when it comes to personal relationships, it doesn't feel like it to me. Like, I don't think that I do well in that department. And so I've been paying much more attention about listening and how to listen, and speaking and how to speak. For instance, one of the things that I'm remembering right now is when someone has shared something with you, then your response should not contain I, me, or mine. Because it's about, or at least when I'm doing this, it's about whatever it is they're sharing with me. So this is kind of a long way of saying that I constantly want to work on my relationship skills.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Abhijyoti.
My name is Marie. So, as you know, I've taken this class with you before, but relationships are ever changing, right?
Yeah.
The thing that has been front and center in my mind over the last few months about relationships is really noticing that in a lot of my relationships, it's like I want something from people, like I'm looking for approval or for them to like me or, something, like coming to them as a beggar rather than really being a good friend and being just present and giving. And so, these things, like a single realization doesn't mean like, okay, poof, I have now transformed past that. So, So that's the big thing that brought me, but as you know, there's always lots to explore relationships.
Thank you, Marie. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I came because I
A
wanted
little closer.
Closer?
Closer is all, yeah.
Okay. I'm Padmini, and I came because my life has recently changed dramatically, and I moved here. And I have a relationship with my son and my grandchildren.
Yeah,
No need to apologize.
yeah.
And I just wanted to have a better relationship with God and with the people here.
Yeah, thank you, Padmini. Thank you. Yeah. There's tissue if you would like. Would you like tissue? Would that help? Yeah.
There was a bit of a common theme that you all may or may not realize you talked about, which is that our relationships change. And I'm interjecting
That's
here.
fine. Go right ahead. Yeah.
But, not a but. It's also interesting that, in my experience, that more than anything, what changes is our personal relationship with God. And then there are physical manifestations of that play out. And that leads us directly into how the life as a pilgrimage helps us understand how these things are playing out. So you talked to Marie about, I don't remember how you phrased it, but there are certain things I really want from people, for example, which kind of relates back to karma. And how past actions from however many lives or even from this life are playing out in our relationships. But really what they're playing out with is our own personal path back to God. That's helping us get closer or not, as the case may be. So it's just interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's neither good nor bad, but it's a helpful context to recognize that things are going to change as our relationship with God changes. As we progress along the spiritual path, our relationships are going to change.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is how moved I am by everyone's sharing, right? Because I feel that, I feel like we're in it with you. And I love what Saranya said about we're here to learn. And to me, it is ever evolving. Relationships, as we were preparing for this class, I noticed that I kept having this theme of the challenges that can come with relationship and the vulnerability that can be part of that. And in particular, the sense of failure that can happen. That I have felt that. I'll just say I have felt that. I have felt like, how is it possible to be so sincere, to try so hard, to feel like I did everything I know how to do, and then the outcome is like, well, that didn't go very well. And it's so humbling. It's just incredibly humbling of, okay, I'm going to put this back on my altar and just say, help, right? Help guide me. I love, Shantala, when you said, I'm here because I paused, I asked for guidance, and the guidance was come. And sometimes in relationships, I have had my own personal feeling of what I should do, but when I pray about it, I get different guidance. I feel like, I should help in some way or be more active in something, but each time I pray, no, it's not yours to do. It's not yours to do. And I'm reminded of, and this I will say all ties into life as a pilgrimage and how relationships are part of that pilgrimage, because they offer us an incredible opportunity to grow. They offer us an incredible opportunity to see ourselves, to recognize what is it, kind of where am I? Where am I in the landscape? Where am I standing? And a few years ago, some of you may have heard me talk about this, but a friend of mine, I had a dear friend from high school, and our lives are so different, we don't see each other very much at all. But she had gone through a difficult time and reached out, and so I went to meet with her, and her life was in a really profoundly challenging place. But most of the challenge for me being with her was how she was viewing her life, the way in which she was holding her journey, and how she was relating to the circumstances of her life. And what I felt was that anything I would say could just come off as like trying to offer a teaching or something. And I didn't feel like that's what she needed. I felt like she needed a friend to just listen, right? But I was quite overwhelmed by the circumstances of her life, especially because of the way she related to them. And I guess I would say there was a lot of what's wrong with the world, what's wrong with other people, what's wrong with all the situations that are happening. And they were hard situations. So I understood why she could feel that way. And it didn't feel right for me to say, well, everything has a purpose, everything has a meaning, something like I might say in this class, life is a pilgrimage, there's opportunity for growth. When someone's really struggling and having a hard time, that can just feel like the worst, most insensitive thing to say. So I didn't say anything. I prayed the whole time. And I think partly because she was so upset, she didn't notice that I didn't say anything. When we spent a number of hours together. And then at the very end of our time, when she sensed it was time for me to go, she said, "Can I tell you one more story?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "I just need to tell you this." And then she proceeded to tell me a story that so clearly was a moment of grace in her life, where God intervened for her, where she started the story by saying, I behaved very poorly the other night. I acted in a way that was, she goes, "I'll tell you that until this grace moment happened, I felt justified. I felt like I was in the right. Everything I did was justified." And I was like, okay. But what happened is she told this story, and it was miraculous. I won't go through into all the details, but the point is, really, truly, God intervened and changed her perspective on this one situation. And she shared it to me, and she said, "Isn't that amazing?" And I said, "It is amazing." And I felt like God was giving me a gift, saying, "I've got this. I'm with her. I'm walking with her. Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. I'm on the job." And so when she told me the story, I said, "That feels like divine grace. Absolutely. I'm so glad you shared that." And of course, I think she needed to end on a high note. For me, my heart needed a high note. I was appreciating it. And then she laughed at herself because of some poor behavior she had acknowledged earlier. And she goes, "Well, obviously I'm still learning." And then I just said, "Life's a school." Right? I said, "School's still in session," right? For me too. And we parted. After that, I felt strongly guided not to see her, to just, now interestingly, she didn't reach out to me. Like, we had one thing that canceled, and a mentor of mine said, "Why don't you offer to talk on the phone, but don't go in person?" Because it really impacted my consciousness. I drove home so heavy. And really what I could feel inside is, this is bigger than you. This is bigger than you. You shouldn't go back into that environment, right? Which felt very hard for a friend who's having a hard time. So my mentor said, "Why don't you offer to have phone call or Zoom? So you could still visit, you could still offer energy, but just not be there, not spend 4 hours together, maybe an hour or two." So I offered that, but she never took me up on it. And I prayed often for her. I prayed often for guidance. The guidance for me was always, don't reach out, don't go. Let her reach out to you. Now, she didn't. So I think a year passed. And then I might have on Christmas sent her a little note, thinking of you, and we exchanged some little texts. And then at some point she said, "Would you like to get together?" And I prayed, and I felt like, go. I was like, okay, which was a relief because I had felt bad about not going. When I arrived at her house, a man answered the door I didn't recognize. He was a healer, and he was finishing a treatment with her, a Reiki treatment and a healing treatment. And she doesn't have a particular spiritual path. So he said, she asked me to answer the door. We'll be finished in just a moment. He was full of light. That's what I could see. And so after he finished, and she wanted us to know each other because of my work and the things I do and what he does. And she was so full of light that day and proceeded to tell me about how she had found unity as a church and was going and found this healer. And I could feel, I'll just say, the guidance I felt was God saying, had you stepped in and offered your support and been present, she might never have found what she needed. She needed the struggle. She needed the difficulty. She needed to find her way to support. And I could just feel God showing me that, right? And I guess what I'll say about relationships is one of the hardest parts for me has been mystery. Has been when it doesn't make sense and I can't sort it out and I don't quite understand what's happening or why. And how to find confidence in trusting God, trusting the journey, being growing, being willing to grow, right? And ultimately coming back to our theme tonight of spiritual pilgrimage. When James and I talked about it, well, let me just ask, how many people have been on pilgrimage, a spiritual pilgrimage? Yeah. So for those who...
hiking.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah. Clarifying, yeah. So whether you've been or not, but for those who have, I just want to say a little bit about my understanding of pilgrimage. And part of what makes it a pilgrimage is intention. So there's this powerful intention to dedicate the trip, to dedicate the journey to growing spiritually. And there's this feeling of, I give it to you, God. Whatever happens, however it unfolds, whatever I experience, it's yours. And the freedom that comes with that is quite remarkable. So what I have found is I've had mixed experiences on pilgrimage in terms of like my physical body. One, I was very, very sick the entire time. I got sick on the way there, sick the entire pilgrimage, felt better the last day. And the grace, I mean this sincerely, the grace of that pilgrimage, I felt it during the time, and it stayed with me very powerfully ever since. So it had nothing to do with the state of my physical body. And in fact, there was a day at one of the sacred sites, I drug myself there. I was grumpy, didn't feel good. And I thought, well, you're here, you might as well go, right? So I went to this little chapel, and I experienced a wave of joy that was so profound. And what stood out to me is I knew it wasn't from me, because I felt so crummy and was in such a crummy mood. So there was nothing joyful about me, but this joy came through me. And I had the thought, how fortunate that I'm sick. Because it'd be easy to just think the joy is me happy on a trip. But I'm not happy on this trip. I had to every day talk myself out of not going home because it was hard. So, and I've also had pilgrimages where I felt great and it was fine, but the consistent theme is not the outer reality, it's the inner reality. And so when traveling through life and relationships with a focus on the inner reality can be profound, is what I've found. There's a lot of solace and a lot of comfort and a lot of clarity that can come from evaluating relationships that way. You know, am I growing? Am I expanding? Am I learning? Right? Is that happening? And if, or as Swami Kriyananda said, am I willing to? Because even sometimes when we evaluate, we can't tell. So he has a long list of how to evaluate your spiritual progress. First, he doesn't recommend you try. But if you're insistent and you really want to know that you're making progress, he phrases everything from the perspective of, I'm open to or willing to. I'm willing to grow. I'm open to be kind. I want to be compassionate. Not that I am, but I want to be, or I'm open. And for him, he talks about directional, that progress is directional. So I think I will pause in that place and...
Let me pick up this thread, if I can, on the intention. Again, for those of us who have been on pilgrimage, when I'm thinking back, we were in Israel. Some of you were there with us in 2020.
Just the beginning,
before COVID.
2020, yeah.
And so we were walking the Via de la Rosa, the Stations of the Cross. This was the path that Jesus walked leading up to his crucifixion. And we went there, for those of us who were there, we walked it a couple different times, with the intention with intentions. And people, millions of people have been walking that same route with whatever their intentions were for 2,000 years. And it has infused the very ground with those intentions, with this spiritual journey of that, those couple of miles of that path. So that even somebody walking there who doesn't necessarily have a pilgrimage type of intention can feel it. And this is what happens. If anyone who has walked into any great temple or church that has been around for hundreds or thousands of years, in the East or the West, it doesn't matter. Whatever the spiritual path is, it doesn't matter. You walk in and it's like, whoa, what is going on here? I mean, there are people who talk about there are these zones in the earth and so on, and say, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But here's what I do know. Almost every place that I have been in that has been around for hundreds or thousands of years, where people have been praying or meditating or walking in with an intention, a spiritual intention, I can feel it. And that's what happens with relationships. So in this way, this pilgrimage, life is a pilgrimage, in one sense, it's a bit of a metaphor. When we met on a blind date. Maybe we'll talk about that in a different week. But we didn't necessarily have any specific intention. But we knew it was one of those things, it was instant love. We knew we needed to be together. We had a life to live together. We had a potential. We didn't know what that potential was, but we had something to realize. So the intention was be open and explore and continue going forward. It was in many ways very inconvenient because I was just about to move 3,000 miles away. I had already accepted a job. So we had to carry on long distance. But we kept that intention. So we did carry on long distance. And a little over a year later, year and a half later, we were married. And that's been over 31 years now, going on 32 years. So in the sense that life as a pilgrimage is an actual thing as we bring our relationships along, but it's also can act a little bit as a metaphor. That the difficulties that arise, the ease, the happy moments, the joys, everything that the human heart, the emotional heart experiences with others, we experience on that pilgrimage, on that path. And those, in one sense, those things can feel like they get amplified, the highs and the lows. But when we can hold that intention of this is a pilgrimage and that for this moment I'm walking it hand in hand with this person, it can also amplify the intention because we both have a similar intention as we're walking. In this case, in this partnership relationship, as we walk, if guru bhais, friends, family members, acquaintances, whoever, whatever the relationship is, that the same thing can apply. We have an intention of being a family unit with the two kids, but sometimes I want to be together, sometimes I want to be alone. The intention of we're going to travel together, or the intention of I just want to be open for, I don't remember how you phrased it, Penny, but I want the relationship with God and understand that. I have these human relationships, but I want to be open to this relationship with God and gurus and what's going to happen there. Our relationships can help amplify that. And that's a big part of what our life, that pilgrimage, that path is all about.
Part of another aspect of pilgrimage, and I touched upon being on one where I didn't feel well physically, is that what's interesting to me about pilgrimage is that hardship is viewed from a perspective of not being wrong. And I think in relationships, so often, if there's any bumps in the road, any difficulty, any hardship, right, the most natural feeling is this is wrong. This is wrong. I'm wrong, they're wrong, something's wrong. Versus, well, what is it that's happening? What is it that's happening?
Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Versus, why is this happening?
Why is it happening? What is the opportunity, right? What's the opportunity? Am I being given an opportunity to grow? Am I being given an opportunity to be strengthened? Is this a moment of deepening my commitment to what I believe in? James and I recently, when he was talking about, and others have talked about how things change over time, one of the things for us when his parents died, my parents are already gone, and so when his mom had died, and then a few years later,
about a year and a half,
his dad died. And when his dad died, both of us felt we had completed our duty to the family in terms of how often we spent time with the family.
my birth family in
James's
particular.
birth family, because now it was all siblings and a few older nieces and nephews. But we knew for us that we needed to give our energy more completely to our spiritual life and
Spiritual family in particular.
and to our spiritual family of Ananda, right? So one of the things that you may all have experienced, but when someone dies in a family, quite often there can be a surge of energy for the family to come together more tightly, more strongly. It's a beautiful thing It's, there's all kinds of reasons for why that's helpful and valuable. I support it. But for us, we knew we couldn't be part of that energy. And we weren't saying we won't be in your relationship anymore or we don't want to see you anymore. But what we were saying is that, how they spend their time and what's important to them and the kinds of activities and things they want to do are not in our best interest. And we'd participated in a lot over the 20 years that his parents were alive, that we were married. And so what I will say is it didn't go well. It didn't go well. Like, we did our
Still
best.
isn't 10 years later.
It's still not easy. It's really not. We had, I would say, a beautiful conversation with one of his siblings and her partner. And at a certain point, we hadn't seen each other in a while. We're part of a family text string. So we keep loose connection that way, send pictures or participate. And so anyway, with Christmas time had reached out, would you like to get together? And, we often serve at Christmas here. We're just very involved in the church here. So we had said to the siblings, holidays are hard for us to come. But, outside of holidays, it'll be a little bit easier. So anyways, just after Christmas, they said, would you like to get together? Yes, so we drove down to see them there in San Jose. And we really were having a lovely visit. And I appreciated it. His sister at a certain point said, can I ask you again about your decision and why you're doing it and why it's important and what it means? And we happened to be talking about relationships. They were sharing about their partnership. We asked them if they were thinking of getting married. They both had been married before. And they felt like, we've been married. We don't need to do that again. We're partners and we like it. And I was reminded that when James and I were engaged, this sister gave us an engagement party. And how beautiful it was. And I remember just how I was welcomed into the family and how much I loved being part of the family. I really had, I had hoped my life would unfold where family would be central for me. And God would always be part of it, but I just loved the idea of family being central. So I really tried to make that happen. And my own soul was just not here for that. That's not why my soul came. My soul just wasn't on board with that. So
Kept getting thwarted.
yeah, it just kept calling me to a deeper spiritual life and saying, family's beautiful, it's really wonderful, but it's not why you're here. You're here to, as James said at the very beginning, to know me. That's what I felt from God. You're here to know me, right? So I, surrendered to that slowly over time. And, once you're involved in a family, it wasn't appropriate to just exit. But at this particular time with the parents, we felt like, and we felt karmically, it was right to be as involved as we were until they died. And so anyway, the sister was asking us, and she, from her perspective, Ananda it just seems so narrow. It seems so narrow to have your whole life be about God and have your whole life be about service and your whole life be 24/7 available. They asked us, is that mostly what you do? Yeah, that's mostly what we do. And does everyone who's part of Ananda serve that much? Like, no, not everyone. It's because not everyone's called in that particular way. Asha has said it's a karma, right? It's part of your karma if you are. I mean, it brings us joy. It's not a burden. We're not unhappy about it. It's the right thing. We're grateful to be able to do it. I had wanted to have children. It wasn't in the stars. And I really think it's because this other calling was my calling. So I always felt that would be true. But anyway, but I will just say that there was a moment in the conversation where I could feel the gap of where we were and where they were, and I couldn't bridge it. There were no words that could make sense of our choice. There just weren't. And she said to us, I feel like spirituality, when it's basically done well, is integrated in your life. And it's not your whole life, but it's part of an integrated whole. And I said, I really understand that. I love that image. I had wanted that image, but it's not who we are. It just isn't. And we said, we don't feel separate from you. I know we don't see you much, but we think of you guys. And, you know, the time we share together is a continuum for us. Things have changed outwardly, but I told her I'm as grateful for that engagement party as I was at the time. I feel like you are as much a part of our marriage and our relationship as you ever were. It's just that we are expressing our relationship differently now. And what she said, and she has said it before, she said, you guys are always honest, and I appreciate it. And it's clear that, you know, like we invite everyone to come, but we know that it's not for everyone, right? It's just not. And I humorously said to her, this was a few years ago, probably one of the last times we had this kind of conversation, like, could you explain to us? And what I told her is that we do value family, but how the family spends their time is so different from how it's right for us to spend our time. And I just said to her, imagine this. Imagine I said to you and to the rest of the family that James and I did, family's very, very important, and we feel like we should be together, all of us. And you should be with us. And we'd like you to come to Ananda for Thanksgiving, and we're going to start the day with a meditation, right? And then we're going to have a spiritual talk about the importance of gratitude, and it'll be lovely and uplifting, and then we'll have a vegetarian meal together with about 60 to 100 other people, right? And that's what we think is the perfect way to celebrate Thanksgiving, right? No football games, no meat.
No turkey, no wine.
Yeah, no alcohol. Yeah, like, and she just started laughing. I said, I'd never ask you to do that. I can't imagine any of you being happy doing that. But our soul sings doing that. We need that. We've had a lot of Thanksgivings the other way. They were okay. They were good. We don't regret them. We're not sorry about it. But we just, you know, I don't know how many years we have left. Maybe a lot, maybe a few. But we just are at that point of needing to be authentic. It's not against anyone, right? And the challenge in relationships is I can't control other people's perception, no matter how I say it. And I've tried. Like, okay, there's got to be a perfect way to communicate this. And what I've found is, well, be pure in intention. People will feel that, and she always does. And we did have a lovely visit. We all agreed it was a lovely visit. And we left letting there be a gap, a place between us that we couldn't cross. We just couldn't create a bridge that would make sense of it. And I really understand why it doesn't make sense to her. Why it feels like a really narrow path, and we're shutting out the world. And I said, we see a lot of people. We're actually around a lot of people all the time. I don't feel like we're isolated, but I understand why it feels like that.
One of the main things that we differentiated that some of my siblings have felt, and I think she felt it to a certain degree, less so than some of the others, is it wasn't personal.
It's right. It's not personal.
And this was a very important part of it. We were not being with them because of who they were as people.
That's right.
And so there's a concept here that we haven't stated, but I'm going to state it here, that we'll delve into a little more deeply, I think next week, which is divine friendship.
We will next week. Yeah.
So even though there was this gap that was hard to explain and hard for them and hard for them to understand in a reasoned way, hard for us to explain in words, we have always held them as divine friends.
Yeah, with great love.
With great love. So this is why it was important, part of our intention in this meeting then, the other month, just a month ago now, was to do that, to share that divine friendship, and to, once we were in the conversation, for them to recognize this was not personal.
Right, and we're not judging their life as wrong.
That's right.
right? And at one point she said, well, I guess we do have a really worldly life. It's a beautiful life. It's a wonderful life, right? So we don't need it to be different than what it is. It's just not our life, right? So what we're asking of the siblings is, could you honor what is right for us?
It's not just
But
that
it's not an easy
it's
thing
not
always
just
to
that
do.
it's not our life, it's different, that coming back to that pilgrimage, it actually holds us back.
Yeah, right.
And
It
that's
does.
that's what was happening 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that we recognized while my mom and dad were still alive, having all those interactions, being a part of that, was holding us back from what we were trying to achieve. And that's what shifted for us, is we no longer wanted to be held back.
We need to do those things. You know, it's like we've talked about tonight, growing, like we come to classes to grow, right? So for us, like, you know, the Christmas Eve pageant is a deeply meaningful, powerful experience that's part of, we need that nurturance and that sustenance for our spiritual life. So every choice, right? The same thing with service. So I think the success of the connection was love. That I know they could feel it, and they said they felt it. And we feel their love, right? His sister at one point, because she could feel the love, and I could see that, like, she got to a certain place of acceptance, and she said that to us, but she said, you know, I don't know how to communicate this to any of the other siblings. And we said, it's okay. Yeah. You can let go of that burden. Yeah. You don't have to. Of course you can't, right? Like, you're barely grasping it, and I think she only got it energetically. It's not that it doesn't really make sense. And yeah, so.
The other thing that happened, and we actually haven't talked about this, but I felt it anyhow, which was that, again, coming back to, again, we were not renouncing my family of origin, but in a way we kind of were. But coming home from that and entering back into our spiritual family, I felt closer. Mm-hmm. So that there's this sort of renaming this intention. You know, we talk about how important it is to be with Guru Bhais, people who follow the same Guru. But talking about how, in that sense, with my siblings, was holding us back, just further emphasized, amplified that intention of being on a spiritual path with others. And it really helped me feel closer to our spiritual family.
Tying that into pilgrimage, you know, as James was saying earlier, the power of when you go to a place that many people have been, but also when you're there with many others who are so completely giving themselves to the moment. And again, my very first pilgrimage, I really, in the best sense, overwhelmed with the devotion I saw and the complete abandonment all around me of others, just weeping with joy and touching stones with reverence and having a personal relationship with God, even though 100, 200 people were all around them. Like, here we are all together, and somehow we're all having this personal relationship. And the energy of support that offers is that any self-consciousness, any kind of hesitation, any part of me just gets freed up. There's just this incredible freedom that happens. So that life is a pilgrimage with others who are making a similar choice to at least dip into it. Because, you know, much of our life with Ananda, we didn't live at Ananda. We're coming up on 10 years, but I've been connected to Ananda since 97, so 20-something years. And the way our life was, right, the things that were either asked of us or we were responsible for one way or another, it's been a slow journey to where we're standing now. And it just took time. It took time for it to be right for us to be in this place. But when we weren't living in community, we found ways to be connected to community. When we lived in some place in the country, because we've lived in many different places in the U.S., where there weren't any close Ananda, well, then we had a meditation group, right? Like, we did the things we needed to do. James was telling someone recently that we're connected, and I know some of you are too, to online with Ananda. And you'd think we wouldn't need it because we live in spiritual community, but we're always looking for a way to be connected and resourced and inspired, right? It's like, so we need it, is what I'm saying. And that's part of what pilgrimage does, is it renews, it's so renewing of your energy. And just as James said, coming back here, we just feel like we're coming back to all the pilgrims, right? All those who are making choices that aren't easy choices. And that's the other thing, I'll just wrap up with that piece of, we said to James's sister, we're renunciates. So it is narrow. It doesn't feel narrow, though. It doesn't feel narrow.
It's a narrow doorway.
Yeah, like the path,
Literally.
things do fall to the side that you're not doing anymore. They're just not part of what you're doing. But what I've learned through Ananda is when that step is right, it feels wonderful. It feels like a gift. It's the best next thing. And the pilgrim's vow, and I always love Asha talking about the pilgrim's vow, because to me that vow speaks to whatever vows you've taken. Any truth seeker lines up with the pilgrim's vow. And no one else might not know. It doesn't have to do with how you dress. It doesn't have to do with all the outside things. It's not an outer reality. It's an inner reality. And so that was another part of it for us that we just felt was meaningful. As we sat and talked about the class and, what kind of themes stand out to us, what's held us in our journey, what's helped us. So that's why we chose for tonight, spiritual pilgrimage. Relationships are part of, it begins with the self. I think that's the ultimate thing, that spiritualizing relationships begins with spiritualizing your own life. And from that place of deepening your own life spiritually, it's then I can relate to others from a spiritual perspective, even if they aren't relating to me that way, right? Even if they aren't, because I can't control that. I can't control that. But they will feel the love. And as James said, next week we'll talk about divine friendship and how to share that.
That spiritualizing it becomes a foundational part. And then we'll talk about this in the coming classes about how that then manifests with our human relationships that we have.
Right.
So it's not, we're really focusing on the self part tonight, but it will expand out.
Laying the foundation.
But it's important that we come from this foundation for all the other exploration that we'll do.
So we wanted to open it up for questions, comments, anything that you would like to share. You're welcome to. It's easy for us to keep talking, but we don't want to talk the whole time. If you have things to say, we'd like to hear from you. So would anyone, Padmini.
You were talking about your family.
Yeah.
I have that same issue with in-laws.
Yeah.
They party, they drink wine. I mean, Christmas is like this huge celebration, loud music. Lots of drinking and lots of food, lots of fun. But I'm the one not drinking.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, come on, have a little, come on. Why aren't you? And it's like, I think this year I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But I don't want to hurt their feelings either.
Yeah.
And I've kind of mentioned it to my son that I'll come after Christmas.
Yes,
After Thanksgiving.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So it's great to hear you say that.
Yeah. And I
plan.
Yes, that's right, Padmini. And the other thing that I want to offer as you're saying this, I'm reminded of it, is that James and I, our intention isn't to be a model for something, but the truth is it is modeling something. Our choice is modeling something. We're not asking anybody else to do it, but when someone sees you doing something different.
Yeah, no, it was in the back of my mind.
Was it?
Or, for this year. To do what I wanted to do.
That's
not
right.
What I felt like I had to do.
That's right,
To
right,
be part of the
Right.
quote-unquote family.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, they're all wonderful, lovely people.
right,
They're great,
yeah,
but they're in a way different place.
yes, it's right, yeah.
Sometimes it takes those sort of stark comparisons to recognize the things that I was doing before. Again, coming back to the change that I was talking about earlier, the things that I did before are no longer satisfying in that same way. So that
They're depleting.
They're depleting, and they
It's
can get to the
depleting.
point of actually being depleting.
Right.
So that to the point where that degree of perhaps duty or perhaps honoring, well, they're good people in that
Yes.
way, and just and there's a lot of other stuff in there that we could label it.
Well, they're family, they include me in everything.
Yes,
and
it's
everything
lovely.
is just fine.
Yeah.
But just because it's lovely doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
That's right, yeah.
Exactly.
And
That's right.
that's the hard part. That's a part of what I was talking about in the very beginning of maybe the second hardest thing on this spiritual path is to recognize, to be selfish and to say, my job is to realize God. It's not to honor the loveliness of the fun that my siblings are going to be having, or my in-laws, or whoever, fill in the blank.
And you can say it exactly that way, to realize God, or just to say my spiritual life, right? I mean, whatever the words are that are true for you. But I do think, and that is what I've seen, even though the family doesn't really understand, they see our sincerity. I can see they see that. They do. And so sometimes it's just, but I'm so grateful, Padmini, I'll tell you, every holiday that we're here, I know it's the right decision for us. But it's not been an easy one. It's not. I've prayed a lot about it. And always I've come back to, you need to do this. You need to stand in your truth. You know this is important. And it's too much of a compromise from my spirit to not give myself what I need. Right? Thanksgiving, we had, I think, 120 people here. I was talking to two women, it was their first Thanksgiving, they were crying. They were crying being here. They said, I've never been so grateful to have something like this to celebrate Thanksgiving this way. I said, I know exactly how you feel. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Yes, Marie.
So just to add on to that is that I was very, just hearing how you handled it in terms of staying in your truth, not getting defensive, not cutting them off, all that is an admirable goal for some of us to aspire to.
Sure.
But I think, when I think of similar kinds of situations in my own life, even just the honoring of what I know I need to do is right, even if I don't feel safe enough to tell them exactly why, or I frame it in a way that, it's more impersonal, or, that the important first step is to do the right thing.
It's true. It's true.
And then maybe, down the road, I can
Yes.
have a nice deep
We
conversation.
have to
Yes.
take ourselves for where we are.
It's
Yes.
very true. It's absolutely true. Thank you for saying that, Marie. Yeah, is that, not everyone feels like they can have such an open, direct, completely honest. Yeah, we were ready for that. We were ready for that, but it's not the only way to do it.
I knew that before my mom got sick and eventually she passed away. So this is probably 2 years before, or maybe 3 years before she passed away. We already knew that we had that desire, so to speak, of pulling back. And I did. There was a long period of time, I don't remember how many months, it was a few months, where I had literally no communication with my mom. We lived like 7 miles away.
At that time, we lived pretty close,
Very,
yeah.
very nearby. Had no communication for months, and it was very difficult on her. But it ultimately got to the point of we weren't ready for that. She wasn't ready, so we reconnected again. So we have to we have to take ourselves for where we are and what we're ready for, because if I'm on a pilgrimage, all I can do is take one step at a time. And I start with, where are my feet right now? I don't start from over there.
Yeah.
I want to get there, and I'm going to work on being in, recognizing that's the direction I want to go. But I start with just that first step.
And discerning your responsibilities. I think that's
Yeah.
the thing, like what James was saying, is that, we felt such a longing to be more part of Ananda or more part of the celebrations. And so in that kind of stepping back, we came to the realization it was too hard on his parents, and it didn't feel right for us to do that for them. It just didn't, right? So, but I think it's why we so quickly after, okay, Dad has passed, and we had been fully part of that whole thing. And it was hard on the siblings. They didn't see that coming, right? Even though they knew our life. But we had endured. We had endured. And part of the enduring was a sense of duty. It was a sense of duty. So finishing something, we felt like we were completing something. And then there's peace with that too, right? There's peace. There's a sense of I did what was right for me to do, and now I have the right to say I need to do this for my own life. And I ask you to release me if you can, right? Energetically. But we each have to discern that. Swami, many of you may know this, but one time he was asked a particular question that was one of those conundrum questions, like, wow, how would you answer that? And his answer was, well, what you're really asking me is what is God's will in that situation? And he said, you have to discern that for every situation. You can't say, like cookie cutter, well, this will always be the answer. This will always be the decision. You should always do this. You can't do it. It can't be understood in that way. So even with duty, very famously in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that a higher dharma will free you from any negative karma of not tending to a lower dharma. So you can't use that lightly. We don't use that phrase as an excuse to not attend to what we're responsible for. Right. But that being said, sometimes, and this can happen, sons or daughters, whatever the particular relationship is, but when they're called to the monastery, they're called to be a monk or called to be a nun, and the family didn't want that, right? Like, well, no, we were counting on you to take care of us, maybe, right? And so sometimes there's lots of beautiful stories of how the divine works its magic, so that the family is taken care of. And the son can go and be a monk, right? Or the daughter can be a nun, or whatever it is. So anyway, just to say, it takes deep discernment and in being with others. And for me, coming to classes, right? But the answers come. So I really do believe, seek and you'll find, right? I believe in that teaching, knock, it'll be open to you. Ask, you'll receive. I've seen that to be true. So, and maybe talk to a spiritual counselor if you feel like you're bumping into, I can't get an answer here, I don't know what to do, or I need help, how do I do it? How do I say it? How do I make the choice? So anyone else like to share or question, comment? Let's give space to that, a moment for that.
Turned it off.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Claire.
Well, this may not be completely related, but I just want to share, this year I went to the 8 hours meditation, and that was the most profound experience. And usually for Thanksgiving, Christmas, we go to Arizona. That's where my husband's family is. He has a big family. This year we didn't go yet. But then later, my husband took my daughter for the 8 hours meditation. So I'm very grateful he was taking care of both kids, and I came for a whole day. And I was nervous, and I didn't know that, but later, what you just commented on, and you told me before too, that's a higher Dharma.
Yeah.
So it all worked out so beautifully. I remembered everyone, after the 8 hours meditation, I was just filled with joy and peace. That's not me, that's from divine.
Yeah.
And later, later I also took my son here for the Christmas event. And my husband was with my daughter. They took a short trip, and then they went to Arizona first. Because of my experience this year, I haven't thought of that, but I'm thinking this year, I want to do the same thing. And so, which means I want to, at least for me, I want to postpone my trip.
Yeah.
I want to stay here for the Christmas celebration. Some part of it. Before I leave.
Yeah.
And also for the 8 hours meditation, I'm the kind of person who's even have a hard time meditate for 15 minutes at home.
Yeah.
But just by meditating here for so long, it's of course into different sessions.
Yes.
And just by doing it, it taught me how to meditate.
Yeah.
I remember for the second part of second session after the first 45 minutes, my mind was just like a group of monkeys jumping around. Like one group hasn't settled down, the other group jump out. And the second part, like the 2 hours meditation, I just realized a profound realization. Wow, 2 hours meditation is easier than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I realized how much expectation and burden, mental burden I had on myself. When I sat down for 10 minutes meditation, I want to have a peaceful mind. That's hard.
Yes.
So I need to let my mind go crazy first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's true.
so, and also I completely agree with you with the, the energy.
Yeah.
Because here there were, Shanti, Asha,
Right.
a lot of you,
Yeah.
and just like a lot of long time meditators.
Right.
And all the energy.
Yeah.
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 Just
I'll
beautiful,
be willing
Claire.
to
I
bet
love that.
that whether your husband realizes it or not, I'll bet he noticed a difference in you.
Yeah, he did. He did.
And that's something that, in one sense, it can feel like, okay, I'm going to be selfish and work on my relationship with God instead of being with my husband and my kids or whoever for any of us. But we then bring God with us when we go back to them. I'll tell you a little bit of a fun, it's not a funny story, it's funny, but it's actually really important here. When we first met and we got engaged and we went to an engagement encounter, which was something through the Catholic Church. And it's a longer story, I'm gonna cut some corners here, to the point being though that one of the things that was a concern of Vivekadevi's was that I would want her, as we later got married, to have a different relationship with God because, what about me, the husband? My concern was that she would want me to become, just as devout as she was. And, at that point in time, I wanted nothing to do with religion. Religion and spirituality were one and the same for me. But my answer to her was that I had known from literally our first date, that blind date, that how important God was for her, that God was number one in her life, and that without God, she wouldn't be who she was. She wouldn't be the person I fell in love with. She wouldn't be the person that I knew I needed to be with, that made no logical sense. So she brought God to me. So in the sense of being selfish to help nurture her relationship with God is what ultimately took 20 years. Well, no, it didn't take 20 years. It took 5 years. But anyhow,
Seemed like 20.
it took some years for me to get on board with that same path. But there was no expectation of that.
No, it was very surprising. It was because I just assumed that the only person who would be a good fit for me would love God as much as I did. Because of like what we're experiencing with his siblings, it would just be too weird. It would just be, another class, right? Another retreat. And I knew, well,
Church
right,
again,
right? I just knew. And so I was concerned that I didn't want to, I looked, in my mind's eye down the road, and he'd be rolling his eyes at, like how much God can one person do? And so he reassured me, that just what he said, that's what I love most about you. But his concern was that I would be restless with him. Aren't you inspired? I mean, like at some point I'd want him to grow spiritually. And it's a grace, a state of grace that I didn't. And I remember feeling like, well, why would I need you to love God? I do. I don't need you to love God. I love God. Plus I had in my own life, so many people didn't feel the same way I did. I just happened to be around that as part of my strengthening in my life's journey. So I didn't expect it at all. I was like, well, at that time, I wasn't part of Ananda. I hadn't met anyone. I mean, very few people that felt what I felt. So I didn't need him to feel that. But what James taught me, just as he was saying this, and it's what I was saying earlier, I didn't hold in any way, I'm modeling something for you. No, I was doing it because it was sincere and it was right for me. But James shared at one of our meditation groups, because this was a time when we weren't around Ananda at all, and I was needing more community. I was teaching yoga and meditation, and I said, do you mind if we have a meditation group in our home once a month? And he said, no, I don't mind, I'll come. Right, because James really appreciated meditation and yoga for stress management. So at one time we were having a group meeting, and one of the women in the group said, what do you do when your partner's not interested in God? Like, how do you navigate that, right? And and so, and the thing is James had said at the beginning of the group, I'm not meditating to find God. Just so you all know, but everyone would forget it. They'd forget.
Just because I said it doesn't mean that wasn't true, and they all knew it, but beside the point.
So she said that, and I paused, she was kind of asking me and asking I was the leader of the group, of like, in the question of like, how do you navigate that? And I was pondering an answer, and James said, I can answer that. Great. And then he shared a story, and just as he did a moment ago when he goes, I don't think I've told you this. I was like, yeah, he hadn't told me this story. And he said that we were on the East Coast, and it was like a month previous, there had been a hurricane that had happened, right? And we weren't evacuated, but it was scary. And, there you are in the midst of it. You don't know what's going to happen. In a town over, many people, there was a lot of damage to homes and things. So anyway, this particular night, James was really stressed about it, really stressed. And for a state of grace, I wasn't, is all I can say. So I just had this inner practice of, well, what can I do? So just be centered in God was my practice. Like, just be peaceful, meditate, whatever. Anyways, we had a basement that was flooding. We had a little pump going, and he was worried. There were real concerns, but I just knew there wasn't anything we could do about it.
There were lots of things to tend to. Let's just leave it at that. It was a hurricane.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. So anyways, he was stomping around. He was really upset, concerned, whatever. And the more he stomped around, the quieter I got. Like, I was just like, just get centered, just stay centered. The only way to handle this is just be calm yourself. So at a certain point, he had his rain jacket on, his boots, and he came by, and I thought, I don't know why, I just thought I would offer.
The power went out.
I said, would you like to play a game? He looked at me like I was insane. It's just like, play a game? Are you kidding me? Right? I was like, well, I'm like, what else are we going to do? So anyway, no, I don't want to play a game. He stomped down into the basement to check on the water level. I said, I go, okay, I'm going to go upstairs. And I had this little yoga room, and I thought, well, as long as the power's on, I'll go up. I'll put on some little classical music. I'll light a candle, right? I'll just do some writing. And so I told him, I go, well, I'm going to go upstairs. So I was up there praying, meditating, trying to have some calmness. It's stormy outside, stormy inside. And at a certain point, James came upstairs. And I was just writing, right? And I saw him come in my room, and he just laid down on the rug.
The point was when the power went out.
Okay, power went out. I didn't notice, so I don't even remember that. So he came up, he laid on the rug. He didn't say anything to me. And I looked over at him. He was just lying there breathing. I thought, okay, he's peaceful, so we'll just leave him alone. And we never talked about it. And we survived, and there was no damage or anything. Well, now a month or so later, someone in the group asks, how do you handle that? How do you navigate that? And James said, here's what I'll tell you. He said, I did think it was crazy when she asked me to play a game. I did think, she'd lost her mind. We're in a hurricane. What are you talking about here? And he said, but the thing I noticed is her peace. And it was undeniable. The peace. And at a certain point, and the power had gone out, he said, I was so exhausted and so tired of being stressed that I know, and I didn't know this because he never told me that. He said, I found her. Where is she, right? And he went up and he said, and I just remember, and he said, and the room was just filled with peace. And I just laid down and let the light come to me, right? And so he said to this woman, carry the light. Don't worry about it. Just carry the light. They'll feel it. They'll see it. They'll know it. Boy, right? That was so amazing. That was truly, I didn't know that at all. And I thought, so that was I said, there's your answer, right? And it taught me a lot about, because really I was trying to save my own sanity. The storm was stressful and his stress was stressful. So okay, how do I stay in my center? And I just focused on that. So it was, it's just remarkable. Yeah. Okay, so we're at time. Oh, yeah, so it's the...
No, I was just,
okay.
all by way of saying, good for you going to the 8-hour meditation and
That's
staying
right.
for the Christmas pageant. Because
Really.
what that does is it allows you
It
to
carries
carry the
the
light
light.
back to the
Your
kids,
family,
your
to
husband,
your children.
whether they need it or not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to make a comment.
Okay.
Just particularly after hearing your story.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure by that point,
Yeah.
you were meditating, doing all this
Right,
practice
right,
for years and
right.
years.
Yeah.
And I had, after the 8 hours meditation, basically afterwards, I wanted to keep meditating, just
Yeah.
be peaceful the whole day.
Right.
I didn't even have eye contact with anyone. I guess people were avoiding it too
Yeah.
because everyone's inward.
Yes, yes.
So afterwards, I prayed to God, okay, I'm going home. My kids will be so excited. And the voice and the vibration, I didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
I just want to go somewhere, read about God.
Yes.
And go to sleep peacefully, not even talk.
Yeah.
And so I prayed and I went home. I remember how excited my kids were, but I was it's hard to describe. It's like I was protected.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I was in a fish tank, but very nice fish tank.
Mm-hmm.
All the loud noises, excitement
Yeah.
were far away from me.
Yeah.
It didn't even, even
Yeah.
the sound seems further,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
And I didn't even want to talk, but I was accepting everything. So
Yes.
I feel it's really like profound divine joy.
It is.
Yeah. But of course, I was too greedy. I was like, okay, I hope this will last for a year. But I last for that night.
That's
The
right.
next
That's
day,
how
I
it
still
works.
needed to
That's
keep
how
my
it works.
practice.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful, Claire. Thank you so much. I think it's the perfect way to end,
Yeah.
which it gives us all hope, right? It's just so Thank you. So
Thank
let's
you
just take
all.
a moment to center. We'll just pause for a moment and reflect on the light. Just visualize light shining within you, right? And let that light be your guide. And just feel that sense of what Claire was mentioning of protection, right? That we can carry the light and share the light, and that light will guide us and help us find our way. Breathing into that. And then we'll send out the light as a blessing to all. So rubbing the hands together and just visualize yourself as a divine channel of light, sending blessing and light to all. 3 ohms together. Peace. Amen. Okay, great souls. Thanks for coming. Have a beautiful week. Yeah. And see all those who can be here next week, who can be. Not you guys, right? And that's okay. But after that, 3rd week, yeah.
Enjoy Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah. So you'll get the recording. Yeah. I'll turn this off. Yay.
Wonderful stories.
Oh.
Just can hardly imagine.
Right.